and one of the first modern steel coasters opened just 6 years later at Disney's Magic Kingdom on January 15th, 1975. This was Space Mountain, an indoor roller coaster that raced past stars, moons, and space shuttles within a retro-futuristic white dome, an iconic structure in theme park architecture. Since then, many roller coasters have attempted to incorporate various sci-fi themes into their ride experience, ranging from space travel to apocalyptic dystopia. The levels of execution vary widely, with some being cheap knockoffs of Space Mountain and others offering a celestial immersive experience. Dark rides and other theme park attractions have attempted to capture the illusion of space travel, but none are quite as thrilling as a coaster speeding through celestial scenes and cyborg battles. Let's take a look at 5 levels of sci-fi theming used in roller coasters. Although many of their attractions are built on a budget, the Six Flags parks have tried their hand at building some sci-fi themed coasters. One of the easiest subgenres of science fiction to recreate is the post-apocalyptic genre. The Six Flags parks did exactly that with their coasters named Apocalypse at Six Flags America and at Magic Mountain. Six Flags America's coaster was a B&M stand-up coaster, which opened there in 2012 and was relocated from Six Flags Great America, where it was known as Iron Wolf. As Apocalypse, rockwork was added to the theming to give it the feel of being in a desert wasteland, and pyro effects were installed to add to the excitement. In 2019, the stand-up trains were converted to floorless trains, and it reopened as Firebird, but as of the closure of Six Flags America in 2025, it may go back to an apocalyptic theme as it sits abandoned, waiting for its future. The other Apocalypse at Magic Mountain also has a unique history. It opened in 2009 as Terminator Salvation the Ride to tie in with the release of the latest movie in the Terminator franchise. Rather than being a steel coaster, it is a wooden coaster built by GCI. Along with its setting of a desert wasteland, it feels more apocalyptic than Six Flags America's Apocalypse, especially with the natural landscape of Southern California. During its brief time as Terminator Salvation, it featured a pre-show with characters from the movie explaining a plot to get civilians into a bunker and onto a train to escape the zone occupied by the T-800s. However, in 2011, the park lost the licensing rights to the movie and the pre-show and other theming related to the Terminator franchise was dropped, and then it was renamed to Apocalypse. As a fan of wooden coasters and GCI, this seems like the better of the two Apocalypses, but hopefully the Apocalypse on the East Coast can live on at another park. Kings Island's Area 72 is a themed area within the park that features 2 excellent space-themed coasters. The name Area 72 is an obvious reference to Area 51, the military facility that houses classified information on UFOs. As you walk into the area at the rear corner of the park, you pass a car fitted with a satellite dish playing a radio station hosted by an alien conspiracy theorist. Then you encounter what appears to be a warehouse building with the logo of a government organization called the Bureau of Paranormal Activity. Inside the building is the coaster Flight of Fear, a premier-launched coaster that is completely enclosed and in the dark. It reaches a top speed of 54 miles per hour with 4 inversions. Though it was originally conceived as a Star Trek themed coaster, it opened in 1996 with tie-ins to the 90s TV show The Outer Limits. Although the show was cancelled in 2002 and the references in the ride were dropped, the queue for the ride features a giant UFO and the station is lined with alien bodies in cryogenic chambers. The loading station is separate from the unloading station, so the trains come back empty, giving the illusion that the riders were abducted. Next door to Flight of Fear is the imposing 300-foot-tall lift hill of Orion, the B&M Giga Coaster. The ride is found within the Fort Mason Research Compound, a reference to Kings Island's location in Mason, Ohio. The story is that the coaster is a test program to prepare volunteers for space flight so they can catch the aliens, I guess. Throughout the queue, there are references to other coasters at the former Cedar Fair parks like Cedar Point, King's Dominion, and Carowinds. Overall, Area 72 does have the feel of a highly confidential military base keeping secret information on extraterrestrials, and these coasters are a great fit for it. Here we have a pair of dueling sci-fi themed coasters located at parks halfway around the world from each other. One is Battlestar Galactica Human vs. Cyclone at Universal Studios Singapore, themed to the battle between humans and cyclones in the Battlestar Galactica TV series. The two tracks of this coaster are very different from one another. Both were manufactured by Vekoma, but the human side features standard sit-down trains, and the Cyclone side features inverted trains. Both sides have different layouts also, but there are several points during the course of the ride for the tracks to interact. Both sides begin with an LSM launched lift hill, and each have a track that's about 3,200 feet in length. The human side is slightly faster at 56 miles per hour, but has no inversions, while the Cyclone side has a top speed of 51 miles per hour but has 5 inversions. This was a pioneering roller coaster, being one of the few dueling coasters that have one side that is upright and one that is inverted. 10,000 miles away in Orlando, Florida, there is another space-themed dueling coaster at another Universal property. Stardust Racers at Epic Universe is another launch dueling coaster themed not necessarily to science fiction, but to astronomical fact. The two tracks are themed to comets racing through the cosmos. The yellow side is called Photon, and the green side is called Pulsar, which are real scientific terms, but they have nothing to do with comets. The trains definitely have the aesthetics of a sci-fi movie, and you may notice that they also have a reference to a sci-fi franchise. The back of each train has a device that looks like the flux capacitor from the Back to the Future movies. As for the ride experience, manufactured by Mach Rides, both sides have 2 launches to get the ride up to 62 miles per hour, and each side has one inversion that syncs up perfectly in its 5,000 feet of track. If you want coasters that simulate an epic race through the cosmos, the coasters on this level will absolutely deliver. Like Level 3, this level is home to 2 coasters that are halfway around the world from each other, but have some of the most unique ride experiences anywhere. The first is back in Orlando with Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot. The ride begins with a pre-launch section with the Guardians preparing you for the mission. Then you encounter a Celestial that sends her crew and the Guardians back to the beginning of time with a backwards launch. Then, with a big bang, the train is launched forward to reach a top speed of 60 miles per hour. It's one of the 6 classic rock/pop songs that as the ride soundtrack starts. For the rest of the ride, the trains travel through wormholes. The cars spin as they speed through space and time to get back to the present time at Epcot. All the while, a space battle against the Celestial happens while the upbeat soundtrack plays. Thousands of miles away at another Asian park is another coaster extremely like this one. Space Fantasy at Universal Studios Japan is an indoor launch spinning coaster themed to space travel. This coaster was manufactured by Mach Rides and is a more mild experience than Cosmic Rewind, but its effects are just as immersive. It uses 3D projections for its effects, so it is often overlaid with alternate themes for a period of time. There is a seasonal XR ride experience that uses virtual reality goggles to produce effects that tie into anime and other Japanese media. However, the base ride is themed to space travel. Rather than a rock soundtrack, an orchestral score plays as the ride spins through the cosmos, past stars, planets, and comets before returning to Earth. The 2 coasters I mentioned here create a playful and immersive ride experience that captures the blissful feeling of a joyride through space. Tomorrowland is the original science fiction themed area at a theme park. The original was located at Disneyland in Anaheim, California, and opened with the park in 1955. The attractions in the area were originally intended to predict the future of technology and its impact on society. However, this ambitious vision was difficult to accomplish, and much of the area remained empty for the early years of the park. The area needed a centerpiece attraction that would stand out visually and draw in guests to the park. Planning for this attraction, which would become Space Mountain, began as early as 1964, when Walt Disney met with his team of Imagineers to brainstorm concepts for a rocket ride through space. Early concepts of the mountain that would house the roller coaster would show a steel mountain with many peaks, even having the coaster track weave in and out of the structure. The perfect fit to manufacture this coaster was Aerodynamics, a pioneer of tubular steel track design, who had worked with Disney on Matterhorn bobsleds. However, the early concepts for the ride were too much for some of the best people in the amusement business to handle in the 60s. In the book Disney Mountain's Imagineering at its peak, Jason Searle writes, "Although Aero took their best shot at the initial 4-track concept, at that time they were not yet using computers to design their ride tracks, and drawing up ambitious plans the old-fashioned way was a tall order. Even WED's computers, which were capable of calculating all the curves in a given track, would take all night to process the data for one curve. Technology had not yet caught up to Walt Disney. So the initial plans for Space Mountain were put on hiatus while Disney worked on other projects. The most major project was the creation of Disney World in Florida, which would open in 1971. This park had its own Tomorrowland, which was in need of a signature attraction. With the larger land area available to work with compared to Disneyland, this was the perfect opportunity to revive the Space Mountain project. The construction of the original Space Mountain would begin in 1972 and would open to the public in January of 1975. This would use a more streamlined design of the mountain compared to the concepts, which would use a dome with a single peak with several spires coming off of the surface. Inside the mountain was the coaster built by Walt Disney Imagineering in partnership with Aerodynamics and RCA. The coaster would have a dual track, which was trimmed down from the initial 4-track concept. The 2 tracks are not mirror images of each other, but they do intertwine with each other as they wind through space past stars, satellites, and space shuttles inside the mountain. 2 years later, Disneyland would finally get its own Space Mountain, 13 years in the making. Disneyland Space Mountain would open on May 27, 1977. Although it was built on a smaller scale than its counterpart in Florida and uses only a single track, it was able to achieve the same capacity of around 2,000 riders per hour by using trains designed to hold 12 riders at a time, seating them side by side rather than in single file. It was also designed to run 12 trains on its course at any time, while Florida's could only run 8 at a time on either of its tracks. This version was also built in-house by Walt Disney Imagineering and features a lift hill that is like a launch sequence for a spaceship. Then you see projections of constellations inside the dome, which is lacking practical effects. Onboard speakers were added sometime after opening so that a unique soundtrack could be played. As other Disney parks would open around the world, they would receive their own version of Space Mountain. Tokyo Disneyland would open in 1983, and its version would open along with it. This version is most similar to Disneyland's in California. In 2024, it was closed and demolished, but a new version of the ride will open in 2027 on the site behind the old one. Space Mountain at Hong Kong Disneyland would open in 2005 along with its park, with the ride largely being similar to California's. Since 2016, this version is known as Hyperspace Mountain and was given a theming overlay to tie into the Star Wars movies. California's version also had this Hyperspace Mountain overlay briefly in 2019. The most unique version of Space Mountain is the one found at Disneyland Paris. Instead of featuring a 70s sci-fi aesthetic, this one has a steampunk aesthetic, being based on the 1865 novel From the Earth to the Moon by Jules Verne. This is the only Space Mountain to have inversions, with 3 of them inside the mountain. Another thing that sets it apart is the launch, propelled by an electric winch which is set inside of a giant cannon. This is based on the concept in the novel that a rocket is launched from a cannon to get to space, rather than using jet engines as we know today. The only Tomorrowland that does not have a Space Mountain is the one at Shanghai Disneyland. However, they got their own science fiction themed coaster with Tron Light Cycle Power Run, the Vekoma-launched motorbike coaster, which opened with the park in 2016. Eventually, Magic Kingdom in Florida would get their own version of this in 2023, which would neighbor the original Space Mountain. Both of these coasters have over 3,000 feet of track and reach a top speed of 59 miles per hour. They began inside a room that has the feel of a digital cyberspace, only to be launched outside under a triangulated canopy, then re-enter the cyberspace through energy gates while racing another simulated light cycle. On this level, we have come full circle, with one of the newest sci-fi themed coasters being next to the one that started it all. Those have been some of the greatest sci-fi themed coasters around the world. The history of these attractions is fascinating, and it goes deeper even than one I mentioned here. Of course, there are many other sci-fi themed coasters that I didn't mention, so if you have a favorite Space Mountain clone, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on my next voyage.